Today we're going to be talking about food chains and food webs and how they describe the flow of energy. So you've got 3 pages here. I want you to tear off the first page, and then you're going to cut around this outside perimeter of the back 2 pages. So now I have food web and energy pyramid. I'm going to take the energy pyramid, and between the dotted line and that cut, I'm going to put a thin line of glue. It doesn't take very much at all. And then I'm going to glue the food web one to the top. Okay, now you might get a little glue on your table. You can then fold this back on that dotted line, and you can still see the back and then the front. Now we're going to take that front page, and this time when we cut, we're going to be sure that we don't throw away the 8 boxes at the top, okay? And then we're going to cut around the outside perimeter of the bottom. Now we're going to, I'm going to go ahead and fold this first on that dotted line, and I'm going to take my foldable, put a thin line of glue on the top where it says food webs, and then I'm going to glue food chain to the very top. Okay, so that completes my foldable that I'm going to use today. Now, starting at the front, we're going to look at all of the 8 pictures, and if we were to choose something to put right here, what picture do you think we should put to begin our food chain showing where the energy comes from? So if we looked at these, all of these are biotic or living things with the exception of one, the sun. The sun is abiotic. And so we are going to put the sun right here. I'm not going to cut it out right now, but I'm just going to write the word sun, and that's where the sun is going to go. Now, this arrow and all of these arrows are showing the energy flows into the next organism. So from the sun, the energy is going to flow into an organism that can do photosynthesis, that can use the sun's energy to make glucose. So looking at the pictures, there are only 2 pictures that you could put on that first box. There are only 2 organisms out of these 7 that do photosynthesis, and that's going to be the grass and the tree. So you can choose which one you want to put, but this box has to be either the grass or the tree. You choose. Doesn't matter to me. Now, the energy from the sun goes into, let's say, the grass. The energy from the grass goes into this next organism. Has to be something that only eats plants. We call that an herbivore or primary consumer. So thinking about what you know about these organisms, there are 2 organisms that only eat plants, or there are 2 of these organisms that are considered herbivores, and that would be the grasshopper or the rabbit. And so here you would glue the grasshopper or the rabbit. Now, the rest is up to you. You've got to take the energy from the grasshopper or the rabbit and put it into another organism that would eat those. But remember, whatever is out here has to be able to eat this. So you're going to complete the food chain using these organisms. Now, the definition of a food chain is a single pathway of energy from beginning to end. A lot of times they don't include the sun in the food chain. They start with the producer or the plant, okay? And so many times food chains just start out like that. You won't see the sun because they think you understand that the energy, most of the energy in our earth comes from the sun. So where does the energy in the food chain originate? Originate is the same as come from. So where does it come from? It comes from the sun. Now, in 5th grade, you learn the words producers and consumers. In 7th grade, you're going to decide, or you're going to find out that producers is used sometimes, but sometimes they use the word autotroph. These are synonyms. They mean the same thing. A producer is the same as an autotroph. So on here, which of these would be your autotroph? If you glued grass, you're going to write grass underneath producer or autotroph. If you glued the tree, you're going to glue the tree. Okay? Now, consumer can also be called a heterotroph. That's the 7th grade level vocabulary word for consumer, heterotroph. Everything that doesn't photosynthesize, that has to consume another organism to get its energy, is a heterotroph. So you will have 3 heterotrophs, whatever you glued here, here, and here, and you're going to list them. What would happen if the producer died? If you are looking at a food chain, then everything else is going to end up dying because you only have a single pathway. You only have one producer, and then that would mean everything after it would die. Okay? On to the next page, we have a food web, and it says label the organisms in the food web above, but I don't want you to label hawk, snake, rabbit, mouse, grass. I want you to label them as autotrophs or heterotrophs. Now, if I'm looking at this grass, is that an autotroph or a heterotroph? Well, it's an autotroph. If I'm labeling an organism that eats the grass, obviously can't do photosynthesis, so it is a heterotroph. Okay, a rabbit eats grass, that makes it a heterotroph. A snake eats grass, eats the rabbit or the mouse, that makes it a heterotroph. A hawk eats a snake or a mouse or the rabbit, that makes it a heterotroph. Label them. All right, so the definition of a food web is many food chains put together to show the flow of energy and feeding relationships. So because of these arrows, I can see where the energy flows from the grass into the rabbit. But I can also infer or tell that the rabbit only eats plants, so that makes it an herbivore. I can tell that the hawk eats snakes, mice, and rabbits, so that makes it a carnivore. It only eats meat. So the feeding relationships, the predator-prey relationships, are also able to be seen in a food web. Now, when it says which organism would be considered a primary or a first-level consumer, remember consumer is the same as a heterotroph, and the first ones are the ones that are going to eat our autotrophs. So we have 2 primary consumers. We have the rabbit and the mouse. You can actually count how many arrows it takes to get there and figure out what level consumer you have. So this from here to here is 1 jump or 1 arrow, so that's first level, primary consumer. If I go from here to here, here to there, that's 2 jumps. And here to here, here to there, that's 2 jumps. So this snake is called a secondary consumer. Now, if I go from the grass to the rabbit and the rabbit to the hawk, that's only 2 jumps. But if I go from the grass to the rabbit, rabbit to the snake, snake to the hawk, that's 3 jumps or 3 arrows to get there, and we always go by the highest number. So the hawk is a secondary consumer, but it's also a tertiary or 3rd level consumer. So we're going to call it 3rd level. So the hawk is our tertiary, which means 3rd. On to taking this food web and making our energy pyramid. All right, so the last page is the energy pyramid. It's a tool used to show the flow of energy, just like the food web does. In fact, we're going to take, I know it says of your choice, but we're going to take this food web and we're going to use it to fill this energy pyramid. And so what you need to know about an energy pyramid is that most of the energy is in the base of the pyramid. The energy that comes directly from the sun into the plants is where the most energy is at, and therefore it's the widest part or the largest part. Just like it's also the one where there would be the most organisms, maybe not counting their names, but individual organisms. There's going to be a lot more blades of grass than there are hawks, okay? And so everything that goes in this first level is considered to be a producer or an autotroph. So the first level is the producers or autotrophic level. Okay, and so on this food web, grass was our autotroph. Okay, and then when we go to the next level, we're talking about everything on this level eats that level. And so what ate the grass on our food web? The arrow from the grass, the energy goes into the rabbit, and it goes from the grass into the mouse. So this transfer of energy goes from this level to the next level. And this is called our primary, which means first, consumers. They might say primary heterotrophs, okay? But primary means first. So when we talk about the amount of energy, if the grass, let's say I changed it to 100 joules instead of 10,000 just to make the math easier. If the energy from the sun goes directly to the grass, and let's pretend that's 100 joules of energy. When it goes up a level on the energy pyramid, it is going to lose 90% and only transfer 10%. Now, 10% is not very much. In fact, 10% of 100 is only 10. So the amount of energy that the mouse and the rabbit are able to use is just 10 joules from eating the grass that had 100 joules. And so every time you go up a level, you lose 90% and you keep or transfer 10%. We call this the 10% rule. Now, it doesn't disappear. That 90% goes into the processing of the food. It goes in, it's lost as heat. But 10% is what moves up to the next level. And so when we look back at our food web and we're going up another level, then we have our snake that is eating the rabbit or it's eating the mouse, and we call that a secondary consumer. Secondary consumer. Now, this first consumer, these are herbivores. This second one is either a carnivore or an omnivore. And then finally, the amount of energy that goes from this level to the next is only 10%. So 10% of 10 is only 1 joule of energy that the snake gets. And our final level, although you can have more levels than this, we're just going to go to tertiary. Tertiary means third consumer. And that was our hawk. And so if we only get to transfer 10%, 10% of 1 is 0.1 joules, which is not very much. So the hawk is going to have to eat a whole lot of organisms in order to get enough energy. So we've filled in the food web, we've labeled the levels,